Hello and welcome to the OTB channel. So, how would you like to install a lightweight desktop orientated Linux distro that has ZFS configured out of the box, and at the back end it's configured using the Void Linux repositories? Sounds good on the face of it. Let's see if it is after the intro. Okay, welcome back. So, something a little bit different today. Back when I started using Linux in 2004, it wasn't the Linux that you know and love today. It was, it hurt to learn how to use it. It was not an easy system to configure, and you had to go through quite a lot of pain. And at the time, there was a couple of up-and-coming desktop BSD distributions that were sort of competing with the Linux desktop. One of them was called PC-BSD, and the other was called Desktop BSD. And I installed and used both. And PC-BSD was a really polished distribution. It even had its own system of containerized applications. I think they were called PSDs. I'm just looking here. That allowed you to install applications without having to interact with the free BSD ports tree. And it was really good. It was a great system. Anyway, as time moved on, despite being, I'm looking here, in August 2006, being voted as the most beginner-friendly desktop, that was PC-BSD in osweekly.com, which was quite a coup. It eventually started to move over to a distribution called TrueOS, again based on free BSD, and that also gained a reputation for being one of the most friendly of the BSD desktops. I never used this, so I can't comment on it. But eventually, through whatever happened, that moved over to something called Project Trident. And recently, that we've actually learned that TrueOS is no more. Project Trident still exists, though. And several months ago, I had a quick look at it. And at the time, it was still BSD based, and I booted up an ISO, and not being someone who's an expert in BSD, I wasn't that impressed with the first look. But recently, Project Trident has made quite an unusual move. They have transferred everything over from BSD to Linux, and in fact are using Void Linux as a back end. So this sort of caught my attention. I've been using Void now for just coming up to 2 weeks, and I cannot speak too highly of it. Yes, there are some paper cuts that you have to get over. Yes, it's for experienced users rather than beginners, and things have got slightly worse in the last week or so, as the wiki that I thought was so great has started to have pages deleted, and the information hasn't necessarily been transferred across to the main documentation straight away. So there are a few gaps there, but nevertheless, I'm really happy with my experience of using Void Linux. So when I was made aware that Project Trident was actually now based on Void Linux, I thought, well, great. I've got a little bit more familiarity with it as compared to a BSD system. And one of the advantages of it, and this is something that I've not looked into in a huge amount of detail, is it uses the Zfs file system out of the box. Now, I've never used ZFS before, but I'm just looking here at a web page that gives a whole range of advantages. So, pool storage, copy on write, snapshots, data integrity verification and automatic repair, RAID Z. It can use a maximum file size of 16 exabytes and a maximum storage size of 256 quadrillion zettabytes. It's a storage file system, essentially. So I thought it was quite interesting that it's bundled as default by the new Project Trident. How relevant that is to your standard desktop user, I'm not so sure, but certainly if you're setting up a NAS box or something like that, it sounds like something that you may want. Anyway, to cut to the chase, Project Trident, back in February of this year, released a distro which contained this ZFS out of the box. It contained Void as its back end, and it contained its own desktop environment, something called Lumina, which I've not really looked at in any detail, but I believe it's a very lightweight desktop. So I thought, well, it would be rude not to have a look. So, sporting my Slackware hat for a change while the other's in the wash, let's fire it up in VirtualBox, give it a go. Just before we do that, though, and I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself here, let's just briefly have a look at the Project Trident website, which is just project-trident.org. And it says it's a desktop-focused operating system based on Void, uses Lumina, blah, 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 and it's an easy-to-use system for both beginners and advanced users. Okay. What are the benefits? All the normal ones that you'd expect: privacy, encryption, regular updates, open source, stable, etc., etc. And what about information? Features of Project Trident. So, easy installation apparently, automatically configured hardware, a customizable desktop interface, lots of software available, easy and safe to update, all the normal stuff that you'd expect. So, let's go to the download section. What I have noticed on here before we go any further is there isn't really much documentation. In fact, if I click on the documentation for Project Trident, it just takes us to GitHub. And yeah, I'm not particularly thinking that's great. What about Wiki? The Wiki? Okay. It's perhaps less than what I would have hoped for. But never mind. Maybe it's just me. Maybe they're still at the point of developing the documentation. It's a shame, really, because if you're going to put yourself out as a desktop distribution that is good for beginners as well as experienced users, it would be helpful to at least have an installation guide here. In actual fact, I've played around with this a little bit just before I came on board with this video, and it's a text installer, which I don't have a problem, so it's quite an old school installer, as is Void, so that's fine. What I would say, though, is it is a net install, essentially. So you download the ISO. It's just got the one option here. It's 64-bit by default. It requires a minimum of 2 gig of memory, or recommended is 4 gig, which shouldn't be a problem. But being ZFS, you're not going to have the choice of setting your own partitioning scheme. It will take the whole disk automatically. So that's just how it is. That's the nature of the beast. But if you're going to download a system that is because you want ZFS, you're going to sort of expect that. So let's kick in, see what we think. Right, so you'll see I've got VirtualBox up, and I've loaded the Trident ISO. Not entirely sure what to expect here, so let's just hit start and see what happens. I'm pointing it towards the installer, and we'll go full screen. Right, we don't, MUSL, so it's muscle automatically. Okay, fine, let's see what happens. There's very little information on the Project Trident website about the installation, other than saying just follow along. So that's what we'll do. And it seems to be booting okay. Right, so welcome to the Trident installation. An internet connection is required. That should be fine. So, set up install options. Right, do we want master or do we want release 2002? Well, the last release, according to DistroWatch, was February 2020. So I'm assuming we want that. The master is probably the development build, so guessing as we go. Warning, please boot with UEFI for the best experience. It's currently booting in legacy mode, and features such as boot environments and dataset encryption will not be available. Well, let's just do it this way and see what happens. So, which disk do I want to use? Well, it's the virtual drive. Encrypted swap size. Okay, let's just go with the default. Pick the system package type. I'm going to pick glibc rather than muscle, simply because it's a little bit more compatible for some packages. Enter a password for root. Okay, I'll do that. 4 characters minimum. Hostname, yeah, we'll leave that as default. ZFS pool name, okay, leave that as default. And what do we want? Desktop install with many utilities, the desktop install only, a server, or a bare bones install on ZFS. That might be quite a good way if you just want a void system, a bare bones void system with ZFS. But let's go for the full install. Full name, OTB. And enter the shortened username. We'll go for UTB as well. And I see we have to do an 8-character password. This, I believe, has something to do with the minimum requirements for the ZFS encryption key. Okay, nothing happened there. Okay, we didn't even get asterisks to show that we were entering a key. Do we wish to begin the installer? Yes, okay. And let's see what happens. I'll speed this bit up until some interaction from me is required. Right, so we seem to have finished. That took quite a long time as the installer was building the system, but no problem there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to power off, I'm going to remove the ISO, reboot, if necessary, install the guest editions, and I'll come back, hopefully, to a working copy of the Lumina desktop. Okay, so we are now back at the VirtualBox screen. I have actually been into this system and configured it, and just had a quick play around with it before I showcase it. But as you can see, it's booting now. The grub screen's come up. It's not showing the correct resolution yet, but it has actually been showing the correct resolution once I've logged in, and here we are. So the login screen looks quite nice. So let me enter my password, and hopefully we get something. And here we are. We have Lumina, which is, well, essentially the desktop for Project Trident. Now, initially, it looks to be quite a plain desktop, although the icons on it are pretty big. What do we get here apart from the wallpaper? Well, let's have a quick look around. This is our menu. Okay, so that's fine. There's my name. I was just clicking on the little question mark there, but it doesn't seem to do anything. And here we have a scrollable panel with some shortcuts. So documents. Okay, so this gives us the Lumina file manager. So presumably I can go into Home OTB. There we go. I don't think there's anything in here at all at the moment. No, there isn't. Strange that we actually have a Git entry here on the file manager, which is called Insight. But okay, we can add bookmarks, we can refresh, we can search a directory, all the normal stuff. What else is here? Pulse audio volume control. Okay, that's fine. That's pretty much what we would expect. There's actually, I've disabled the audio on this, so it shouldn't actually be showing anything. But nevertheless, what else have we got? VLC. Okay, all good. That seems to be opening. And something called Trojita, which is an IMAP email client. We have a link down here on the menu to browse applications, and it actually extends that, and we can see we have quite a lot here. A text editor for Lumina. Okay. Which I don't recognize it. It seems to be a custom-based editor. We have the LibreOffice suite by the look of it. LibreOffice Draw, the Lumina image viewer, screenshot tool, the Lumina media player, Firefox web browser installed by default, Telegram desktop, WPA Qt, wireless LAN configuration. I'm not actually running this off wireless, so presumably this is how we specify whatever adapter we've got. Okay. And what else is here? The theme engine, the screen configurator, printing, a terminal, an archive facility, and a keyboard switcher. Let me just go to the keyboard switcher if I can open that up. And for some reason it's not opening up, but that is. I wonder if I can quit that. There we go. So let's try that keyboard switcher again. When I went into this before, I did actually set that to UK, and it was showing a little flag in here. But at the moment, it doesn't seem to be launching, which is not a good sign. Okay, so browse applications again. Let's have a look at some of the settings. Screen configuration utility. I have to say that I didn't have to install any of the guest additions. It just automatically went to 1920 by 1080 as soon as it was it actually launched. So that looks fairly straightforward. What else have we got here? The Lumina theme engine. Right, perhaps if I bring up, excuse me, some sort of the file manager, and we can see what effect the themes have on it. So at the moment, we're using a style called Fusion, but if I change that to Windows, I'm not, oh right, I have to apply. So hit Windows and apply it. Am I not seeing the difference here? There's not a huge amount of difference by the look of it, just very, very minimal. Okay, effects. So we can turn them on or off. The fonts, it's using Deja Vu. Icons, so we can use material design icons if we want. Let's see if we can apply them. There we go. Okay. Let's try Trident Dark. I think I prefer that, to be honest. Cursors, Breeze Hacked, General Styles, Tray Notification, the sliders, etc. And Desktop Styles, Dark Glass. Not a huge amount there, I have to say, but okay. Let's go back to General. Just click Apply to make sure and close it. What else have we got here? I have to say it feels a bit clunky. I'm in VirtualBox, so yeah, we'll have to let it off slightly because of that, I think. Theme engine. It's just bringing up exactly what we had before. Okay. So what else is here? There doesn't seem to be a huge amount here. Have we got some way of changing our desktop background? There should be, surely. What about our right-click menu? Aha! We have a preferences section. So let's choose wallpaper. Okay, so this is the one we've got at the moment. Now, I have to say that when I was first looking at this, when I booted it up before, it was just using a single folder, and it was using this folder, Trident Space. And absolutely nothing is showing up in there, although if I just hover my mouse over, it says there is actually a number of files in there. And in order to show the wallpaper, what I had to do was actually click on the plus sign, and then I could see all of the different files and click on them one by one and save them. So then it will change. But the fact that in its default configuration, it wasn't showing any of the images and I had to go and dig around is not really a good start. What else have we got there? Trident Space. Oh, I don't like that. I think we'll avoid that. That's a little bit too green for me. Look, let's just stick with that for the time being. Okay, so preferences. We've also got a screensaver, and it's just X screensaver, so it's nothing special there. Right, I'll tell you what we haven't done. There's a preferences option here in the menu. So let me just click on that. Okay, and that brings up a separate little panel and gives us the opportunity, of setting our keyboard to British English. Okay, that's good. What else? Configure desktop. Right, so this looks a little bit more like it. Presumably the theme engine is what we've already seen. It is. The Windows effects. Okay, so that's just bringing up a text file. Desktop defaults. Applications. Okay. All good. Basic settings. Keyboard shortcuts. There we are. I think we're now starting to find some of the more interesting stuff. Interface configuration. The desktop. Okay, nothing there. Panels. Right, okay, so What have we got on the panel at the moment? So panel 1 and panel 2. Right, I'm not entirely sure where panel 2 is. We seem to just have the 1 down here. So we have the start menu, the task manager, the space. I wonder if these are for different desktops. Right. I wonder if I can reduce that, if that's panel 2. Let's have a look. I don't think 5 pixels is going to be enough, but let's just save that. No, it doesn't seem to be that one. It must be this one. Need to do this slowly. Let's just do that. Aha, that's it. That's probably not quite enough. Okay, that's looking a little bit better. Right, so, let's go back to our thing. What does it say on menu? What options are shown on the desktop context menu? Select a plugin. Okay, so you can obviously customize the menu if you want, how it actually looks. Panels, yeah, we've done. System settings, which we've already looked at. I see it's put Octo XBPS in the system settings. User settings, okay, and there it confirms that our window manager is in fact Fluxbox. Localization. Nothing's set here. Well, we want to select British English. Do we have to set it for everything? Time, British English. Numeric, British English. Monetary, British English. Collate, British English. C-type. I don't even know what C-type is, but let's save that and see what happens. Okay, and go back to our settings. Wallpaper, so that just brings up the standard. Okay, so the preferences menu is a bit nicer. There's an auto start option there as well, which is good to see. Sound theming. Okay. Right, so we have got a little bit more to play with here, which is good to see. And we have everything set to British English. I wonder if I browse applications whether it'll let me open this keyboard switcher now. Answer to that is no. Now, the first thing I noticed about this was there didn't seem to be any sort of help system on it. And there was no how-to about how to install files. So luckily, because I had used Void and have used Void over the last week and a half, I had an idea how to use the XBPS file manager. So I did an update. I added the multi-lib repository to it using the Void documents page, and I proceeded to install Octo XBPS. Right, so this works quite well. The problem is, when I initially installed this on Void last week, I got the information of how to install it from the wiki. And Void Linux are currently going through a process to try and stop people using the wiki, which is deprecated, of deleting the wiki pages. Unfortunately, transferring the information that was on the wiki pages across to the official documentation isn't complete yet, so there's some gaping holes. And if you actually install Octo XBPS, you'll find it doesn't work properly. It will launch, you can do the normal thing and you can pick a file, but what you will need to install in order to get it working properly is this package here called KDE-CLI-tools. Only when you've installed this package does Octo XBPS work properly? Because if you choose something to install, I mean, I don't know what we've got here. Let's just pick something small. Oh, Nano's already there. Let me think. Let's do Mousepad. If you want to install it, you right-click and click Install, click the button, confirm, and it's at this point you get the authority box to enter your root password. Now, unless you install the KDE CLI tools package, the problem is Octo XBPS has no way to actually access your root password, and installing KDeso or something like that doesn't work. This information used to be on the Void wiki. It's since been deleted. So new people who install Void, or in fact install Trident, are going to find that they can't find the information of how to do this. But anyway, so I got Octo XBPS installed and all good. It seems to be working, and that means that you can now install anything you want from the Void repos. And it's pretty simple, to be honest. I went through this last week. If you want to check for updates, and sudo is enabled by default on this, it's xbps install capital S lowercase u. This was actually up to date when I first tried to run this before, and I'm not, oops, I've got to put in my 8-digit password for this. There we go. There is nothing to do. That's fine. So, yeah, it is what it is. If you wanted to install a package, xbps-install, and just like Arch, it's a capital S followed by the package name. I have no problem with XBPS. It's a cracking package and it's really fast. And the fact that this Trident is hooked up to that, well, great, you've got the options. Do you want to exit? Yes, please. But the fact is, you've got no information. The new user has no information at all. Have we got HTOP installed? I think I actually installed that already. Let's see how it does. Let's launch it. So it's using 599 megs. I would have expected, to be honest, something to be a little bit lighter. But okay, no problem. So what other options have we got there? You can go straight to your root directory. Aha, if you right-click, you actually have a full menu there as well. So first impressions, I'm leaving a little bit underwhelmed. Let's go have a chat. Right, so that's Project Trident. What do I think? I think it has some pluses. If you're after a distro that comes with ZFS out of the box, it's a definite option. It really is. And the fact that it's combined with Void Linux gives it a lot of power and a lot of choice, and it gives you a lot of choice. The out-of-the-box experience, though, wasn't what I would have hoped with the Lumina desktop. I'll be honest, I didn't like it. It felt clunky. It felt like a work in progress. The fact that I couldn't launch that keyboard GUI after I'd set everything to UK English was annoying. It just wasn't for me. But it might well appeal to you. It's a lightweight desktop based on Fluxbox. I thought the RAM usage was a little bit high, but on real hardware, it's hard to compare when you're running it on something like VirtualBox. Nevertheless, whether or not this is going to take off, I don't know. Certainly, if you're installing it for ZFS out of the box, I think it's a great option. And even if you dislike the Lumina desktop, you've got the whole of the Void repos there, so you can swap and change and do what you need. In fact, I'm a little bit surprised that after moving to Linux, they've stuck with the Lumina desktop environment. They might have been better just going with something like XFCE, and I'm sure the experience would have been much better. So, yeah, it's a bit of a strange one. ZFS seems to be its big selling point. If you just want an easy to install Void distribution, I don't think it has anything to recommend it. Just install Void. For me, I don't particularly want ZFS. I don't have that much of a need for it. I like to install a distro in partitions that I choose, and I don't need such a secure file system. So ext4 is fine for me. And if that's what you want, well, just install Void as per normal, because you don't have that option with Trident. So I don't want to be too harsh on this. I won't say I dislike the distribution. What I would say is I dislike the Lumina desktop. But that's not necessarily something that should stop you installing this distribution. The Lumina desktop just feels horrible to me. It just feels clunky. You may like it, that's a personal thing, but hey. But if you just want Void and you're not interested in ZFS, there's no real reason to use this. So we seem to be coming back to what's the use case. I would disagree that this is for users, for beginning users. I think this is more for experienced users simply because it's based on Void. At least Void has some documentation at the moment, whereas this doesn't really seem to have any. If that was up to scratch, I might change my mind, but it's one to watch, certainly. That's probably as much as I want to commit at this stage. So, guys, that's it for today. It was just like an extra video, really, as I have a day when I'm not actually working. So come and join me on the Facebook group, on Library. Come and say hello on my subreddit. And you have a great day, guys. Hope you enjoyed the video.